Council member of the National Democratic Alliance, Mr. Gasparyan, wrote the following on his Facebook page. This fierce confrontation between Russia and the West, which many call the Third World War, is entering its final and decisive phase. As a result of the Russian-Ukrainian war, there will be a radical transformation of Russia and Putin's regime in particular, as well as a fundamental reformation of the so-called post-Soviet sphere of influence. It will no longer be like it was before. A new reality and a new status quo will be formed. Transition of power has already begun in Russia, which will be much more violent and painful than the one that occurred in 1999. The Russian establishment realizes that Putin has lost his legitimacy in the West, and that he is no longer the consolidating figure of the Russian society and the elite. Therefore, Putin must be either succeeded by someone who can maintain the present system of government, or replaced by a completely new leader whose main task would be the transition to a new system of government and negotiate a settlement with the West. Two clans are jockeying for power to replace Putin. The first is the Patrushev-Bortnikov-Shoigu clan, which includes the past and present KGB and the other so-called enforcement agencies such as the army, police, prosecutors, etc. The second clan is headed by Kovalchuk, Kirienko, Chemezov, which includes most of the oligarchs and some factions from the enforcement agencies. Patrushev is trying to install his son, Dmitry Patrushev, the current Minister of Agriculture, to the Russian throne in order to preserve Putin's system of government with the intent to further restrict civil liberties and with the new acquired momentum continue the war in Ukraine and elsewhere until their desired so-called holy victory. The Kovalchuk clan, which by the way backed Prigozhin's uprising and supports Professor Solovey, in contrast, seeks to change Putin's system of governance and transition to a new, more or less liberal system. Furthermore, they intend to stop the war and withdraw the troops from Ukraine, and in return they seek a negotiated settlement with the West in order to save their wealth and guarantee their personal security. Such are the high stakes in this power struggle. Most analysts predict an extremely difficult, even bloody transition of power that will ultimately culminate into months, if not years, of chaos and turmoil, which the Russians call smuta. Recalling the violent aftermath of the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, Armenia is facing its own watershed moment. It is quite apparent that Pashinyan has irreversibly lost any credibility that he had left with everyone concerned, the West, Russia, and the Armenian people. So the question now is, what type of Armenia will there be after Pashinyan? An Armenia with an area of 29,800 square kilometers, one that has abandoned the Armenian question, a state that is non-viable, weak, always needing help and guardianship, an anti-national, undemocratic, and ultimately doomed to fail so-called Fourth Republic, or an independent, safe, and secure successor state of the first and only Republic of Armenia of 1918, which is built on a strong national democratic ideological foundation, and that has reliable Western allies, rather than self-imposed so-called Russian guardians? The answer to this most important question, I would say also conceptual and principled one, should be answered by both the Armenian people and the West. The answer to this question will depend on which political force will replace Pashinyan and who will be the leader of Armenia after Nikol. Everything will be decided in the coming months. The X moment is approaching, which will be decisive for both the future of Russia and the entire post-Soviet region, including Armenia. The National Democratic Alliance has always maintained that the liberation of Armenia, in the form of decolonization and de-occupation, is not the goal, but rather the necessary and only means to achieve the goal of creating an independent and a free state of Armenia. As for the faux pro-Western and opportunist sycophants who protect Nikol's back at all costs, national liberation struggle, or as they call it, change of vector, is only a goal to reproduce Pashinyan and his cohorts as a Western-oriented government. In reality, their intention is to create a pro-Turkish Fourth Republic, which will only serve to advance their own political and personal interests and ambitions. Armenians, the choice is yours, you must decide. The West must also make an important decision as to which Armenia it wants to see in the newly created world order. The so-called Fourth Republic of Armenia that Pashinyan dreams about will undoubtedly be a constant source of headaches and problems for the West. On the other hand, the revived First Republic of Armenia will be an independent and viable state that will serve the interests of the West, that almost always coincides with the interests of Armenia in the South Caucasus and the greater Middle East region, ultimately Armenia becoming an important link in the Indo-European strategic alliance and a trustworthy ally of the West.